Doctor, should we be scalpel? One out on the breaking news.
That was weird. My little intro didn't work right. What the hell, man? What's up with that?
The spread of the virus is what this pandemic phase 6 means.
Oh, I'm worried. Doctor, should we be scalpel? One out on the breaking news.
Oh, there, it worked. Weird. It glitched out. Whatever. All right, so welcome to the show. It's MIAC on 420 TV. Let me change over here.
Not really being a choice or your body.
Whoa.
And, they
It
have to
started
quit,
on its
which
own.
only leaves one kind of leftist.
We'll get to that in a second. Yeah. All right, let's see here. What were we doing here? Oh, we got to give Mr. Dubai props, right? You're going to make a video and be worried too. What's up, Max? What's up, Steffers? Syrianification. I said it right. Who else? We got Simon and Alias. Cool. What's up? What'd it be? All right, so I'm going to go twist one up before I play it, but hold on. Let's look at some of this stuff real quick. Where do we go here? And then we'll get back to the MIAC. I think it's this one. I always get my windows mixed up here. Hold on. Not that one. All right. See that? It's never smooth, but I'm the director. I'm the host. I make the graphics. I tweak the music. You know what I'm saying? You know. You know. Here we go. I think this is the right one. Here it is. All right. So, Biden. What a douche. I'm going to say that. He's a douche. And now, I don't believe for 1 second that this bumbling idiot is running anything. I don't know who his handler is, but he's so fucked up that he's always telling people he has a handler. You know, I'm not supposed to say this. I can only take a question from this person. He gets lost in the bushes. I'm just saying. Anyway.
We must increase vaccinations among the unvaccinated with new vaccination requirements. Of the nearly 80 million eligible Americans who have not gotten vaccinated, many said they were waiting for approval from the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. Well, last month, the FDA granted that approval. So, the time for waiting is over. This summer, we made progress through the combination of vaccine requirements and incentives, as well as the FDA approval. 4 million more people got their first shot in August than they did in July. But we need to do more. This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those around you, the people you work with, the people you care about, the people you love. My job as president is to protect all Americans. So tonight, I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated or show a negative test at least once a week. Released the key.
All right, so what he said there, the fuckstick, is basically all of America is going to be vaccinated one way or another. Every business that has 100 people is basically every bit of the blue collar workforce. All of them. You know that? And what's going to happen, and I'm going to say this because I think I got cut off or whatever happened on MIAC, is that half of the people that don't want to be vaccinated right now are going to have to quit their jobs in every field, especially government and the institutions. So all of the people that would fight, disagree with, or have a different opinion, or have any pull or any sway, are all going to be forced to resign. And I'm talking about like from police, firefighters, medical profession, teachers, the government, grocery store, Microsoft, whatever. You're going to have to choose to quit or take the jab. What does that happen when that works out that way? Well, I'll tell you what happens is only one kind of people will be in charge of everything. Of everything. From the government to your local government to every store will be run by people all of the same mindset. A super cult of authoritarian douchebags. Anyway, what else was I gonna talk about before the show here? Oh yeah. And this asshat talks about it's not about freedom. And this is a new saying you're gonna start hearing from actors, from news analysts, people at CNN and MSNBC, and the woke crowd, the SJW crowd. All of those are all going to say this thing about, you know how they said, fuck your feelings? And that kind of got into the culture from old people to young people. They all know what fuck your feelings means. It means I got freedom, so fuck your feelings. So now they started a new saying, fuck your freedom. Fuck your freedom. Fuck your freedom. Because they're trying to convince you that you are the bad guy and you're responsible for everything. Anyway, I'll interject into the show a little bit.
Not really being a choice or your body, but they have to quit, which only leaves one kind of leftist authoritarian in our government and every institution. They're purging everything. They're purging anybody that will stand up or say no or speak out. They're forcing them into a position where they have to resign, where they'll no longer have any sway or pull in any of these, agencies or the government of liberty. We're seeing worldwide totalitarian lockdown, and I get kind of tired of saying that, but it's just like they keep upping it faster than I expect them to. Like today, with what Biden's saying is basically they're going to force mandate vaccines on Americans, and if you don't think you're going to start seeing sites like we've been seeing in New Zealand and Australia, I think people are mistaken. There's plenty of people. And by the way, like I said, the people that were having questions about this type of government and this type of mandates, they're all being forced to quit under the same mandate. So like you're going to see a lot of policemen leave, military leave, politicians, whatever, etc. People from companies, which only leaves one type of people,
nearly 80
a
million
single mindset running everything, which is a communistic, authoritarian nightmare.
It's hard to follow up with that statement, and I don't think you read the fine print with the 30x microscope beyond what was given in the mainstream media there, Ransom, because the Department of Labor, if you are going to try to claim unemployment benefits, ye shall be vaxxed as well or not be able to claim. And this is where it goes into the bizarro world. So they're saying you have the choice at work, mandate, okay, I quit. But when you go to say, I quit because there was not my body, my choice, they'll say, well, okay, great. You're going to fill out the application to receive unemployment benefits. Show your vaccination card. I don't have that either. That's why I quit. Well, I'm sorry, we can't help you because you don't get any unemployment or Social Security or food assistance without that moving forward. So this is where I come back at it with this Grand Solar Minimum channel I've had for so long. I have said this issue of food and the access to food is going to upset the apple cart here. And it has every single cycle for the last, I don't know, seven 400-year cycles. We can go back 2,800 years in time. And every time a grand solar minimum cycle rears its nasty resetting head in what we consider society, things change massively across the economy, the populations, and the governments. So it's no different this time. It's just your access to food is going to be limited, and I think that is the trump card right there, the ace in the hole. No food, you die. You get the jab, you die. You go to a COVID camp, you're gonna die. Anywhere you look across the entire planet, this is it. The cull is in play. Now, that's all on the surface level of things, but in a much deeper dive, we are actually in the battle between light and darkness at the moment. This last stand of whatever you like to term it, there's so many terms for this dense, negative darkness that vibrates in energies that draw the human soul down and never let it evolve. And this has been written about, prophesied, and I don't care what the term is you want to use for that dark entity and energy, series of energies on our planet, in our plane right now, versus the light that is trying to take back our planet, take back our world. This battle is ongoing, and if you can't see it, it's far beyond, way super. If you're only seeing the surface level of a COVID mandate to like take your job and thing, the bigger construct of it all is truly this last stand of darkness trying to hold vibrational state as we run away from it, as the sun steps down, and as we move around the Kali Yuga of the Indian Vedic text, where we're coming out into a much lighter vibration. The separation now has begun. The iron burning people alive at the cross of the Vatican Church for so long is finished. So is the central banking and this top-down pyramidal structure of military, corporation, and government stepping on the necks of everybody with taxation. It's gone. We're rising out of that, and everybody's seeing it. The move to cryptocurrencies, and then there's other moves across autonomies and decentralization, more localization, outside the need for a centralized system where they can't tax you. That's the very surface level. That's where it begins. That is the paper-thin level at the top of really what's going on between this duality of light and dark right now. We are truly in a battle for spiritual lives and our own divinity at this moment. That needle goes in your arm, you lose connection with source. And maybe that's what they need by the zombie army, get so many people jabbed up that they lose the connection with source and they will lose their mind of common sense or morals. But we sit here right now. There is a battle. It's not going to be fought with brass and powder. It's going to be thought with your mind, your hearts, and your spirits. And I think that's where I really have come to that realization right this week. It's so far beyond anything physical now. We're going into the ethereal battlefield right now. And I hope the archangels come down and absolutely destroy and rip to the ground everything dark on this planet. They need to come down with their vengeance and rip it to shreds, where darkness goes back for 30,000 years or 28,000 years and it doesn't be seen again. It's going to slowly creep in due to energies of the sun and different energies and Birkeland current strengths and how much electromagnetic activity is moved through the human resonance field, the brains, the planets, the star systems themselves. But until that cycle repeats, we're going to need some intervention here on high, I think, plus what we can do. Ransom.
Yeah, I was. I don't know if it's you breaking up. If you can hear me good or what. I'm having trouble hearing what you were sound like that issue. But I think I got the gist of the battle between light and dark and, kind of right versus wrong. And I don't think people understand the amount of change that's now headlines in the last few days. I've been looking at, me and you have talked about magnetic motors and things like that. You know that these things have always been deemed disruptive technology. But now that Bill Gates is, funding a startup, they're about to go ahead and let some of that technology out there. I've been seeing a lot of admissions from media about next level technology, stuff that they were just saying conspiracy theorists. Just last year, we saw a lot of fires and whatnot, and people were asking questions about certain aspects of the fire that didn't make sense to them, like ash portion and things like that. Now, I do agree that fire can get really hot, but there were some really weird things going on with those fires. And we're going to be using particle weapons, what do you call it, DEW weapons, directed energy weapons from the micro, X-ray all the way over to the microwave bands. They're going to be using all kinds of new weapons. They're going to be putting them out into the public, mounted on cars, mounted on buildings, mounted on. They've now admitted that the Rods of God program is pretty much a real thing. And I just uploaded a video before this on my YouTube channel about a new giant lab they're building here in New Mexico that deals completely with the effects that, how they put it is they're going to be looking into the effects of particle weapons and directed energy weapons in how we can deal with these type of new threats. So they're going to be having drills and different things like that where they're going to be responding to said weapons. And just last year, I had an article that admitted that we did indeed have all of those weapons and we were using them. We have the Biden administration saying that they're going to release a big secret about some kind of next level technology. And then when you look down in the real world, you see in negotiations with the Taliban to take over the American bases that were just withdrawn. All kinds of things are changing, and at the time they are locking down the entire world. So even if you didn't think it mentioned today, I want to point out, while Biden was talking, and I know that he has lots of gaffes and he says things weird, and he admitted that people tell him what to do and what questions to take and what to answer. He gets lost in the bushes. Taking all that into account, today he kind of slipped up and he said, when the new pandemic comes. So when I hear the president of the United States slip up and say the new pandemic, I'm already wondering what's next. What are they going to pull next to completely seal up what they already have going on, which is a complete lockdown of civilization?
I don't know, but you're breaking up terribly. So I'm going to drop you off. I'm going to re-add you while I'm adding my comments to that, and we'll see if we can't get a clearer connection between you and I. Yeah, so to add on to that, it seems since the beginning of the program, we've had nothing but interruptions so far. And again, when you talk about touchy subjects, using Skype to try to connect through to convey your thoughts, it seems that things just don't work that well. Zoom, obviously a little bit better. But the rods from God, those are the tungsten rods that they're throwing from space. The Rods from God program, I'd heard about that in the mid-1990s. There's no propulsion involved except for the release and then the use of gravity to send a tungsten rod at supersonic speeds blasting into the ground. Now think about it, there's no rocket signature on that. There's no way to shoot it out of the sky. There's nothing for anything to lock on because it's been launched from a satellite, and it's using gravity to send a tungsten rod to smash something. And when you're getting velocities at that point, it's beyond an explosive device itself, just the kinetic energy released and the metal used for the heaviness of the metal. It's just, and again, it's one atomical element different from gold, which is I find interesting. What would you say? We're tossing gold rods to the ground, or we're tossing tungsten rods to the ground? That's an interesting thing too. Well, if trillions of dollars go missing, perhaps you could buy and manufacture solid gold rods, but the Anunnaki would be pretty inflamed that you were, squandering what was mined out of the ground for their atmosphere, if the stories hold correctly. But I was waiting for Ransom to come back on here, and one thing I wanted to say for everybody listening, if it's your first time, I run the Adapt 2030 channel. And from the beginning of the channel, after I talked to John Casey, who gave me a great amount of insight into what was going to go on with the timelines, one of the things that I'd come up with after talking to him and doing some more research after another year or so was 1 year before the global famine would start, because we could not produce enough food due to the extremes in weather, the collapsing cloud cells on top of each other, and the jet streams that would inflame that and intensify it, along with the cosmic rays and the different cloud layers laid down by cosmic rays. You can check out Heinrich Svensmark's work for that. It's called The Cloud Mystery. It's a great documentary, free to watch. I encourage everybody. So you understand how cosmic rays create clouds. So when we come into a grand solar minimum, which we are, even though the sun's ramping up, don't let that kid you. That's like that calm before the storm. Because the experts that had forecast this solar cycle 25 to be as intense as solar cycle 24 are 50% wrong already on the intensity and the number of sunspots on the average. This cycle, according to so many, Piers Corbin, Valentina Zarkova, John Casey, and the list goes on, is not going to be nearly as strong as forecast. And I like Dr. Abujamatov from the Pulkovo Observatory in Russia, who lays it down, does an enormous amount of numerical explanation of why it won't, and the cycles repeating. But the thing was, with the information I had, governments responding through history. We now have the most communication, and people are connected the most, supposedly ever in history, but we'll just say in these last 5,000 years. Although we don't understand what had happened prior to that, and there's a lot of unique ruins and unique technologies laying around the planet, from the Antikythera mechanism to supposedly wireless power and antennas on buildings that make no sense from the wrong time periods. Okay, we'll leave that just as a subset of information that, as we know it now, it's the best technology and best connectivity that we've had in the last 5,000 years. Well, governments have known the ramifications of this. And here's the three things that happen. I call it the fingerprint of the grand solar minimum. And to delve into it, there's three things that happen every time one of these cycles come back again. Three. First, you're going to get the economy, and it's going to shatter and collapse, because the value of things that were perceived as value to give a valuation on anything in a society is no longer relevant. There's no longer a valuation of things that people can agree on, because there's no stability in grain harvests and food production, which is the main thing, because you need food in your belly to have even people go to work, to teach, to repair, to innovate. No food, no progression in society. Everything goes backward. The economy is collapsing at that point, because everything becomes so expensive that all money that would be there to divert into expendables or disposables, TV set, new computer, whatever, microphone for me, new car, clothes, whatever, none of that. You're going to spend an enormous amount, almost all, just to pay for food. So everything else on the side is going to collapse anyway, because all the money that you make will be spent on food, and predominantly around the planet, unless you prepared yourself with cheaper food like now and gotten canned food, long-term storable foods and seeds and started your garden so you can produce food, you are out of the game already. It is far too late. You are so far behind right now. Really, if you didn't start preparing a couple years ago, you're not, I'm not going to say you're not going to make it, but you're going to be in a little bit of a duress situation moving forward unless you empty your bank and go buy food this week. I wish you the best of luck. And to learn how to garden, it's going to take years. And if you didn't do it now, and it really, your life is on the line and you need to grow your food or you're starved and you're making mistakes the first time you do it.
They don't have a
Wow. So where do we sit? The next thing of that grand solar minimum fingerprint, if you will, governments collapse. They can't hold it together. People are angry. They're on the street. They're in violent protest because the food costs too much. Their families are starving. And then so when that happens, then the last thing that's in play is the population migration. And see, the way I look at COVID and the lockdowns, it's not about your health. It's about locking down the planet so you don't migrate like every single iteration of this grand solar minimum where people moved. So we have online plane tickets now, and we have credit cards. And what you consider yourself as a poor person in America, you are ultra rich in other countries. And please don't play off like, oh, I'm the victim card in America because I'm not making this much. You won the lottery being born in this country. So for most Western nations to be able to move to other more impoverished nations, that's what I would do too. If you had the funds and if you knew that your country was going to fall out and start zero food production, like Canada is a prime example. Canada, very few people are going to make it through this. It's going to get too cold to grow food, too expensive to buy the food, and then there's going to be so much, there already is unrest amongst the government. You see people throwing rocks at that idiot up there when he's on his campaign program or whatever, promising you the best next jab and next best COVID camp to get locked down and gassed in. Okay, that's great. Thanks, Justin. Those are the three things that happen during grand solar minimums. So you see how the governments are responding right now. The population migration is a major component of this. The economic collapse. And when that happens, in the middle somewhere, everybody's on the street because their families are starving and governments collapse because they're there with the pitchforks. When that just doesn't work any longer and everything's run its course, people say, you know what? I got to move because there's nothing else, no other possibility. I need to move to a different country, a different latitude. And it looks, from all accounts from me, just studying history and knowing what I know, everything before 1 year before the entire collapse of the food system and food production system on the planet, and I say this with the heaviest of heart, damn, we're here right now. We're here. We are 1 year away from total food collapse on this planet, and they're locking the planet down so you cannot move. And I wouldn't have believed it. I had the timelines. I had what was going on in my head. But we sit here now, and it's 1.5 years to almost 2 years before the predicted initial timelines. This was not supposed to happen until 2023, which makes me feel that we are coming into an incredibly heavy, powerful cycle. We're way past the 400-year cycle, and that's not happening. We are into a 2,000, a 4,000, or an 8,000-year cooling period coming at us right now, and governments know which one, and they know how fast it's going to happen. Are you ready? And I'm going to add Ransom back in because it seems that maybe he couldn't hear me or my thoughts have triggered the programming on Skype not to allow this call to go through cleanly. I mean, we are at the edge right here, right now. So I'm going to bring Ransom back in if he reconnects, and we'll see if we can see what the communication is. I would love it if somebody can send me a message to tell me how my voice is sounding here as we go through tonight. I'm going to sign in as Wilson. So if you see me there, let me know how the radio is moving through. Ransom can't get him. I can't get him. And things just seem to be on the twist tonight due to the, I guess, the content. But if you haven't prepared, you really absolutely 1,000% need to get ready right now. Now, will 9/11 be used as a possible catalyst to set things off for this ultimate last lockdown? Like originally when I was doing my research for this grand solar minimum and the 3 things that happen every single one of these events, I knew the lockdown would happen globally. But I really, really thought through all the research I'd done, it would be a massive, catastrophic evaporation of the economy that would lock people in wherever they were, their hometowns, their cities, their states, their countries, where money would become absolutely worthless in a blink of an eye, where nobody would have the means to move to another place. Literally, barely down your city block, you'd be so evaporated on the wealth that you could barely even make it down the city block. Ransom, give me a radio check here. I lost you a few times and seemed to be garbled, and things are strange.
I don't know what that was. I can't seem to get a connection. I reset my phone. Hopefully I sound better. I don't know what was going on there. I couldn't hear a word you were saying.
Well, you know my research, and I was saying that 1 year before the catastrophic global famine and fallout in food production, 1 year before that, they would lock the planet down. And it appears that we're at that point at this moment with this speech today. And it really gives me just the heaviest heart because, man, we could have prepared for this. The governments could have prepared us for all these things happening. And now I realize it is truly a global call. You know, I wanted to put the thought off that they wouldn't be that nefarious and burn the card table down and really go to that point where they would take the life of billions of people for their whatever sacrificial religion or their dark entity worship or their quest for power. And that's beyond a sociopath, a psychopathic grabbing for power, that you would actually take that many lives. I really thought that was beyond the scope of everything. You know, I didn't know how much of it was a built-up narrative to, give the elite power by pretending they had power, just through all the stories of, the guidestones and this and this and this. And I thought half of it was elite putting out stories about themselves to give themselves power because you believed it because you saw it on a radio program somewhere. But now I really believe that is absolutely true. After seeing what happened over these last few days, they are going to cull the population of this planet. It's terrifying, actually, when the realization comes in and you're like, well, I'm glad I'm semi-ready. But Ransom, I tell you, man, we got less than a year. This is it. This harvest season this year is going to dictate and set the precedent for what will happen with food pricing, your availability to food, and how many people will starve in this first year. And as governments begin to use food as a weapon, and if you're not vaccinated, you won't get food, moving into next year when the yields are even less and we have less food and still more starving people, oh my gosh, it's going to become a Charlie Foxtrot, man.
Right, they're not even hiding what they're doing anymore. I mean,
no, they're not, and that's even scarier. That they're telling you you are going to be sent somewhere and terminated if you don't get the vax, which scares me further because they're trying to disconnect you from God. And if you don't take that choice, then your choice is and just like in the Bible, they're like, you're going to have to make that choice. You bow to the dark powers or you end your life, and after your life is ended, your spirit will decide where it goes. And the stories coming out of Revelation and thing are starting to make a lot of sense right now. What's going on, where they're going to make you make that choice, your death, and you sit there with the guillotine at your head, and you're going to need to choose what you want to do. You disconnect from God, or you meet God in one fell swoop, in one few seconds of time. That's where we're heading with this thing, and you better get ready for this spiritual battle we're all into right now. It is so far beyond the physical. They laid the gauntlet down tonight. Today was the gauntlet. There's nothing left. The only choice is light or dark. And it just kind of sank in, eating dinner tonight, and I was thinking about that.
Yeah, they definitely aren't hiding it anymore. And I guess I don't know how much I got across before, but it shows you exactly the divide that they're making. Because I was pointing out that they're mandating for all of these companies, right, that have 100 or more, which is basically the entire workforce, at the same time mandating the government, which is forcing anybody that has any, problems with it, that would buck this, that would disagree with it. They're all having to resign and leave, which only leaves the authoritarians left in there. I mean, that's the only people left making decisions. And I don't know if this is coincidental, but you notice how that it's now for sure that there was a gain of function research funded by the United States in the NIH Wuhan Chinese lab there. They were talking about doing numerous experimentation. So it may or may not be a coincidence that a bat one, which we were specifically funding, and now all that's come out. We know that Dr. Fauci has lied under oath. He's never going to get in trouble, obviously. Multiple lies that are on video. They don't care. They tell you right after that everyone finds out they've been lying for sure, and the proof's in the pudding. Then right after that, we're mandatory vaccines in America. And you're hearing this weird phrase come out of Hollywood and elite people that are semi-elite. I don't want to call them the elite, but, like kind of famous people. And they're saying, how there was a song that was like, F your feelings. Well, now I keep hearing people, like Howard Stern, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the president of the United States, basically saying the same thing, that F your freedom. You're going to do this because you're the dangerous one, even though all of their literature that they're putting out, from the CDC to the NIH, all of it backs up what the public has been worried about and saying, and still they're going to push it on you and still try to blame it on you. It's exactly like the climate thing, where they're pointing the finger at you, Joe Schmo, the peasant. And I've been looking at the numbers of the companies, and just about the entire working class of America, all of them, fit into this new range of mandates. So what they're really saying is that everyone will take it, or you will not eat, you will not work, you will not travel. I mean, they're saying it right to our faces, and people are still denying the reality of it. And if they're putting this much draconian lockdown, you better be sure there's a really good reason. And I think that you've pointed out very good with lots of data. Every single month you're showing charts, you're showing articles that are showing the loss of food and the shortening of the production. They're producing less and less of everything. So it's pretty obvious, even for a simpleton, that if there's only so many supplies out there, they're only meant for so many people. So there's only a part of the equation that has to be changed, just like Bill Gates said when he gave his big old speech there at TED Talks, and he talked about his little formula, and he said the only real letter in that formula was the population number, and that they could reduce that and fix that with the right kind of vaccination campaigns. I mean, they said it right to your face. It's like that universal law of telling someone the wrong that you're going to do them. They're at that point right now. So for weeks and weeks, they'll continue to evade and not answer questions and deny. But at the same time, right to your face, they tell you what's going on. And what they're saying is you will submit, or you won't be part of the New World Order, which the lady from Australia specifically said that vaccinations are part of the New World Order.
And, you know, the one part that you couldn't hear me speaking in the beginning of the radio broadcast here was I was saying, Ransom, you know, you didn't get the 30x microscope onto the laws that are coming out with this and these new mandates that have just been instituted tonight, because the Department of Labor, they didn't talk about that. They evaded that question, clearly evaded it, because if you look further into it, if you don't have the jab, because let's say you quit your job because you didn't want to go down that route and you don't want to take the jab, as soon as you go try to get unemployment, the new mandate will be you have to receive the jab to receive unemployment benefits, food assistance benefits. So they even have you in both directions now. So if you quit because you won't, and then you go to try to claim money, and also there's something coming out. It's in the ether, but it's been in writing. I've seen it a couple times. Where starting in 2022 forward, if you want to receive your Social Security benefits, you will also have to show proof of vaccination. Because, you know, people were laughing about it in Australia, where they're saying you can't access or use online banking if you don't have a vaccination. And everybody's like, well, you're not even in anywhere. You still have to show proof to even use. Well, they're like, well, you could go into a bank branch one day because you have an open bank account. So we need to make sure you're vaccinated in case you want to walk in and do some like in-person banking. So you can't have your online banking account usable because you could walk physically into a place. So they need to make sure that you're vaccinated to use your online banking, although you never leave your home. It's the same thing. Look at the fine print inside the Department of Labor that has been also lumped in with all this. The media is going to focus on the 100-person company, 100-employee company, but nobody wants to talk about the Department of Labor. See, this is what they're going to try to hide from you. Department of Labor, getting your unemployment, getting your food assistance, you got to have jab. And eventually next year, 2022, you can't even get your damn Social Security benefits. But I worked my whole life to get it, and that's for the older people. No jab, no Social Security. Well, they can sell that to a lot of people. And a lot of people at that age will be like, okay, well, I feel like I have a few comorbidities anyway. I should get it because, and then they end up dead. So the way we're looking at it here is the world rises up at this moment, or they don't, and will kind of come through ramification by ramification as teams try to sweep through neighborhoods. What's it going to come down to then? That's exactly the response that they would want, because then they can say, oh, well, these teams are going in to give friendly advice and, you know, bring their free needles with them to the household, and then they got scolded for coming on the front porch. We can't have that anymore. But the Department of Labor is where we need to look next.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually kind of looking at a chart while you were talking about that, and the irony of, you know, they just cut off the unemployment benefits that they were giving people because of the COVID. That all got shut off. So we're all in the perfect position for anybody else that needs that kind of, help from unemployment, that you could put them in a corner where you tell them that and tell them, no, you have to be vaccinated before you get any kind of, not just unemployment, but what about, Medicaid, Medicare? What about, food stamps, the EBT programs and things like that? And, they're going to be forced into that corner, whether they want help or they're just going to be on the streets hungry. And let me talk about this graph that I found that kind of represents the people that are vaccinated by household income. And it kind of shows that people that have less than $25,000 a year are mostly unvaccinated people. So we're talking about poor people around the world. That'll be the main people that won't, be able to take part in anything. And the richer that the classes get, the more vaccinated they become. So the most vaccinated people are $200,000 a year and above. What happens in a few years when the population switches due to these, factors? You're going to have a lot of people that are hungry, that don't have jobs, that can't go nowhere. Well, and what do you do with these people? Well, Florida has already kind of given an example of what they'll do with you. They've made basically what could be called internment camps for the homeless. So it's not a stretch to say that the most people that are unvaccinated are also the poorest people. And those are the people that will first be put into areas to help them, to change their mind, to re-educate them. And it's the same thing. And you notice that's the people that they're attacking in every group, whether it's the climate or medicine. It's all about you being at fault for everything that happens. And when you have prime ministers, presidents, and these people talking about openly that they will make you do something one way or another against every law, every idea that's been set up in the country you live in, you should think something's wrong. And, I was looking at New Zealand the other day, and they had a big stabbing over there. Maybe not a big stabbing. 6 people got stabbed at a supermarket. And I was pointing out on my news show that New Zealand recently gave up their guns, and I got attacked by a lot of people telling me, hey, we got guns. We have single shot guns, and only, they only gave up the semi-autos and this and that. And there's little places you can go put your gun in an armory. And so they have guns. Okay, I was wrong. But in my opinion, if the gun ain't on your hip, then you don't have guns. If it's not on your hip, ready to protect you, you don't have a gun. So this guy comes in and he stabs 6 people. Ironically, the guy is a transplant from a different place who was on a terror watch list. And the guy goes in and stabs. So New Zealand's answer to this is, we're going to stop selling knives at the supermarket. Well, what if there's a tax over food? You're going to just stop selling food at the supermarket too? So you can see how they're directing the entire society to have little pockets of conformists, and everybody else that's going to get dragged away. It's, the Karens and the people that have capitulated to the system are going to think that that's somehow a good thing, that we're cleaning up the streets. We're building back better, David. In America, we're building back better with communism.
Cultural enrichment, don't you love it? And on one of your points there with what's going to happen with the lower earners on the planet, well, the meek shall inherit the earth. I do remember reading that in a book somewhere. So if you look back, who is not going to be taking this? The poorest of the people on the planet. And I'm not talking about poor Americans. You poor Americans who think you're poor, you've grown up in a lottery-winning civilization where you're not out struggling on $2 a day, where you walk 4 miles to go get water to bring back to your house, to do everything by hand, where you can't even consider washing your clothes all at one time, and the water conservation measures and the cleanliness that we expect and demand as just daily workings of a cleanly body is non-existent. I don't understand that people get into a pinch here in the States and, there's not as much money as people would like. I've traveled around this planet quite a bit, and we've all won the lottery. If you're listening to this broadcast and you actually have a radio or a device to listen to this broadcast, you won the lottery when you're born. Do you know how many people don't have access to anything to listen to because they have no electricity in their homes after dark? They are so poor that entire cities and villages are not connected to any type of grid, where they're using a mobile phone on their banking. That's why African adoption to new cryptocurrency and mobile device banking is so high, because nobody has internet. They're all using phones because that's the only connective device that they have in entire regions. So the meek shall inherit the earth. Definitely they shall. And when I see headlines to add on to like something on top of this, to just add another layer into your cake of conversation there, Ransom, LAPD has ordered police to collect social media data on every single person they stop. So what is that? That's a lead into social credit scoring, is it not? What are you going to be? You're going to be stopped on the street and they'll say, oh, I have the Adapt 2030 channel. Oh, you disagree with climate change. You're going to prison because you have wrong think. This is the direction that I see these types of headlines taking us. And watching this here, where you can't even get your food assistance because you're not vaccinated. Really? And then we got California grid operators asking the government there to turn back on the coal-burning power plants because they're going to lose power and have a catastrophic blackout across the West Coast. I guess wind and solar wouldn't do it, right? So please turn back on the fossil fuel burning power plants because we need to save California. But at the same time, I mean, it's already destroyed morally and so many other ways that you could think about economically. But here, stopping everybody because well, you need a clear goal of surveillance to understand what everybody's doing on social media. So what happens after you get stopped? Are you going to be put into a category?
If you don't want to.
They file a police report just because they had an interaction with you and they have your social media. Well, he was a good person, he was a bad person. He's a little bit asking too many questions and things. So as we move out through, the 9/11 coming up here, this is going to be another debacle all around the planet. I can just see how this 9/11 is going to be moved and used as like the ultimate move on the chessboard to usher in this next segment of, like you talked about, Ransom, fascism with a twist and a cherry on top for total global control in a communist social credit score world. 9/11 should be used for something. Why let a good date go to waste, especially, in the numerology of things in the occult world, 9/11, 9/9, 11/9. There's all these, we're in the occult season, if you will, coming up through Halloween. But all the matching numerals. And, this 9/11 on the 20th anniversary after I can't even call it a withdrawal from Afghanistan. There's words that I really don't even, we're limited on the English vocabulary that we can use to describe an event. There needs to be a whole entirely another new word or set of words put in as adjectives to describe the way that the United States was, I wouldn't say kicked out, but powers that had left people, and the way that assets were left in play, and the way that countries have pawned each other off for resources and settlement of debt across sovereign nations. There's different layers going on, but there's not enough adjectives we have in English to describe the way that the United States had left there. I don't know. We're living in a bizarre place, and then look at China. They're about to implode too. I mean, Evergrande. What was that? The bond debacle was like the Lehman times 10 happening over in China, and then Beijing signed off on a whole bunch of new emergency funding for it, so it didn't go under because it would take the entire Chinese financial system down faster than Lehman did. With Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac following, well, Evergrande in China would be the kingpin that would knock everything down. And if you thought that 2008 financial collapse was a big one, the renegotiated debt terms for China in Evergrande really saved the planet in terms of finance. It was about 10 times larger than the Lehman. But then how intertwined and how nefarious and second sets of books are in China. Everything was just so leveraged to the hilt that Lehman Brothers and 2008-9 financial crisis literally would have been just sort of a minor, something in history compared to what this would have done. So everywhere you look, things are coming unraveled. And I might add one more headline in here. Walmart is ending quarterly bonuses for store workers after decades, plural. And I've heard the same thing. I had a distant early warning. I had a great conversation with somebody who shall remain unnamed who said to me, David, when the free shipping at Amazon stops, this is the end of it. Everything ends at that point, because the reason that the valuations in these companies like Walmart and Amazon, etc., are there is because the last mile of delivery to get you that product, to rush product from factory to consumer, that's the valuation of the companies. Not the selling of the product itself, but the service and the market position to get that product to you in that last mile faster, more efficient, and free at the moment from Amazon. If that goes away, the valuations of those companies completely change, shift, and rift. And that was warned, not told, but warned. The sign you need to look for is when Amazon stops its free shipping, everything is going to collapse. Everything. So exit everything into your positions of cash and run out and buy gold and silver or whatever tools or machinery or anything you can get and pull back in your crypto on a hodl position, batten the hatches, because it finishes at that point and the economy will be totally reset into a new value of money based on carbon credits, cryptocurrency, and the new slave labor class, whatever that means when it's left. And I was sitting there going, and I see this Walmart's ending quarter of the bonus. So that's a trickle into this. And that whole Amazon thing was months ago, telling me that when Amazon stops free shipping, that is your clue that it has ended completely. Everything has ended. That must be the marker for everybody. Anyway, and I'll tell everybody, I'll say it again. When Amazon ends its free shipping, when they start to charge for all items delivered, the stock market and financial system as we know it is about to be imploded completely to zero or less than zero to re-emerge with the new economy. And that is the signal the elitists and others are being given as the last straw to exit everything into physical or other ways to preserve wealth and hold on and batten the hatch. It is over. The minute you hear that, you have less than 30 days to get everything in order. And Walmart came out with this quarterly ending bonus. Damn, it's two. And this year-end thing here, we've got 1 year left before the food comes, and it's all matching up in the same timeline. It really is. And the blue star Kachina coming around at the end of the year, the winter solstice, we're going to have a blue comet coming through the skies in 2022. Like, I think 2022 is kind of the year where it all culminates and the new world begins. You said new world order, but the new world begins in 23 and 24.
Yeah, that would make sense about, free shipping being kind of the end of things, because they put people in a position where they've closed a lot of mom and pop shops where you can't just go buy things right now. And then also you have this whole trend of, I'm going to say, Generation X and millennials, not wanting to pay debt like student loan and these things. So this stuff is going to backfire. And it's already starting to happen right now, where you have this massive group of people that are helping the new trend start. And when you start looking at the numbers, all of these people have bought and paid for cars, houses, trinkets, and they haven't paid for them yet. What they've done is they've used these little universal basic income checks that the government said was stimulus or COVID relief, and they wasted all that getting signed up on things that they haven't earned the money to buy. So I was reading this article right now. It says, as buy now, pay later surges, a third of U.S. users fall behind on payments. And when it goes down through the demographics, it mostly shows that it's millennials and Generation X, because those are the people out there having problems right now.
Cryptophobia awaits us. David Dubine right here, along with Ransom Godwin from 420 TV Freedomist Films. We'll be back in 2 minutes, 2 seconds. Enjoy your break time. It's a heavy day. Water from a fire hose is how we're drinking tonight. See you in a couple minutes.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Be evasive, but that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth as opposed to fiction.
In Genesis chapter.
As I recently released the key parts of my pandemic preparedness plan so that America isn't caught flat-footed with a new pandemic comes again, as it will. As I recently released the key parts of my pandemic preparedness plan so that America isn't caught flat-footed with a new pandemic comes again, as it will. As I recently released
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it.
Follow-up with the story about Dr. Fauci yesterday in The Intercept. The documents released that shows he was untruthful. Follow-up with the story about Dr. Fauci yesterday in The Intercept.
If you don't want to go in, you don't have to.
What if they do?
I'm not going to force anybody. I'm not putting masks on anybody. That's not my job. The order.
So they can go in without the mask.
This is a county health department order.
Okay.
And a policy of the school.
Right.
That if anybody that's going to go in, they got to have a mask on.
There is no policy.
I'm not arguing.
Okay, so they can go in, guys. They can go in. They can go in. Go on in, guys. Go in. Well, they can't enforce it.
It's not a law. It's a mandate.
No pushing.
You can yell at our students. Oh yeah, drink a bottle of water.
Be orderly. Be kind and respectful. Be kind and respectful.
RadioFreedomSlips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back to the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. Ransom Godwin from 420 TV Freedomist Films is joining me tonight. The best co-host ever on the planet. Always with amazing thoughts, deep insights, and we are drinking from a fire hose tonight, so stand back a little bit for the information flow. I'm David Dubine, your host here. And please remember, venues like this, as we've entered this new, thumb screw tightening phase of your freedoms, your liberties, our human nature in itself, our spiritual beings, the way that thumb screws are being put on, your choice between light and dark. If we're going to communicate with each other outside of ham radios, marine radios, CB radios, and, carrier pigeons, it's going to be venues like this. I really believe Revolution Radio will be one of the last sites up and on the net, if the entire net stays up. We've entered some strange times here, so consider a donation. I know a lot of people are stretched for cash, but anything helps to keep the station on, the running costs. and production costs, etc., to bring you information like this. So if you feel that it helps you get prepared, at least in any way, shape, or form, along with myself and all the other hosts and all the other programs, 24 hours a day, this is something that you should support. And with that being said, Ransom was kicking me off a couple videos here, especially the TikTok video I'm quite interested in. So the trucker strike in Australia is something in itself, but I saw Mike Adams over at the Health Ranger had something about COVID camps and gassing extermination something, and I thought, well, that's kind of a strange headline, because he's very much a scientist, very much a straight thinker. Political on ends, sure, aren't we all? But it was such the bizarre headline the way it was written. So I decided to watch the video in question, and I could not believe what I heard. Knowing history the way that it's been framed for us about, the concentration camps in Germany, and the way that, the rise of Hitler, and we're seeing very many rises in the Holodomor, and the way that people were starved in the Bolshevik Revolution, and the things that had led up to that point. The starvation of the citizens using food as a weapon. Millions died from starvation, cordoning off regions of a country so people starved, and then they took away their farming equipment, and then it was all political retribution, which led to, and you can kind of see how history is moved from one segment to another. When people do push back, well, they're removed because they're too much of a threat. It's like we are serfs here that are expendable. Cattle on the ranch, they're getting too unruly and got to remove them. But, Mike Adams, I have a lot of respect for the guy, because if you know anything about Mike Adams, he had a site about alternative medicines, natural cures, and that was his thing. He was a doctor. He has a research lab, and he delves into, at that time at least, what was the purity claimed by different companies and countries from imports of herbs, etc., extracts, and he did a lot of testing. So he was all on the alternative medicine, using food as medicine and your health, actually curing yourself, getting off the pharma wagon. And he was removed from all social media. So as soon as he got removed from all social media, I was like, yeah, he must be telling some truth, because he was removed everywhere for his stance on using food as your health, using food as a medicine. So for him to come out completely out of the blue and be like, these COVID camps are talking about gassing people in the Australian COVID camps, I had to watch the video, because I was like, that is so outrageous of a headline. Really? You might expect that on The Onion or on like the Jerry Springer show, not from a Mike Adams headline over at naturalnews.com. You wouldn't expect that kind. That is so that's an outlier of a headline anyway. So I watched the video, and I sat there and I was listening to the conversation in between. And here's the story. The person was supposed to get out of the camp after being there for 14 days in total individual isolation. And I think it was a woman screaming, "You did not even give me a crossword puzzle the whole time I was here for 14 days. Now, she was supposed to be released at midnight on that night, and for some reason they wouldn't let her go. And you could hear her clear say, "I tested negative. I don't have COVID. You have to let me go. At 12 midnight, I'm out of here." And they're like, "No, put your bag back." Like she was waiting by the door to get out of there. And then you could hear clearly the guards or whoever's there going, "If you don't behave, we are taking you to be gassed." And I was like, I need to re-listen to that. Did I hear the right thing? And I sit here going, are we at that point right now? As Australia rolled over into that point? Because, Ransom, that just link you sent to me there about the Australian truckers cutting off all the highways and all the food. Like, I haven't heard much about this, and I'm glad you sent it to me, because I knew the truckers were going to start to strike. I knew they were. But it's almost a complete information blackout, and I know somebody down there who I will not mention if it's male or female or their name, because I need to protect their identity in Australia, who has been giving me some info, but I have not heard about the trucker strike down there. But it was supposed to be ongoing, and here you sent me this most amazing video on TikTok, so please tell us about it. What do you think? The store shelves are empty. Do you think it'll make a difference, or are the Australian government just going to be like, I don't care if you starve serfs, we're going to keep our thing going? Or is it really going to make the government buckle? See, this is where we come in. Truckers are saying we're cutting off all the supplies to all cities. Government might just say, I don't care, let everybody die. And then we'll just come back, and whoever's left is left.
Good. That was the plan, to cut off the distribution anyway while you're locked down and you can't go from one town to another. No, actually, I have been paying attention to that, and I was listening to all the people threatening that they were truckers and that they weren't going to shut off. And I think two things are shown by this. People have had enough, and I think they're actually just going to get replaced by people that are on the other side of belief system. But it does show you how fast everything can be shut off just at the drop of a hat. That means if anything happens, natural disaster, government change, a revolution, whatever it is, if it cuts off the highway systems in any country, no food at the supermarket, which means if you're not growing food or if you didn't save food, you're starving to death. But don't worry, there'll be a camp where you can go, and then all you have to do is, accept all the rules and you'll get free Wi-Fi and whatever. Actually, I think about I didn't see what you're talking about the gas thing, but it may sound like a language a failure to translate thing, because Aussies do talk different about everything. I think they might have been talking about macing her, or using a spray on her because they're controllers, and when people don't do what they say, they resort to violence, and that's around the world. You see that here too. But what's really scary to me is that you get to see a small microcosm of what will happen worldwide if these measures continue to happen. If everybody's shut down, if no one can travel, that kills any kind of economy. Any person that studies any aspect of the economy knows that you have to have supply and demand and customers and retailers, or it doesn't work. And the idea that they'll stop free shipping is just another sign that they want more money to get you goods, and they know that they're dwindling people's wealth while they do this, because they kind of control the prices. And then I was watching also in China, of course, they already have concentration camps. So the idea that we're getting to this point as a world, like, how like somebody might have talked about in World War I, that we would never, that would never happen, but it did. And then it happened again after that in other countries. We got Pol Pot, and you can just go on and on and on. We know that this happens. Matter of fact, the number one killer of human beings on the planet throughout history has always been democide, which is death by government, however that happens. But it appears that while everyone argues about things that don't really matter, I'll point out the things that the elite strike back, and people think these are right. So in France, and I don't know if you've ever watched the cartoon called Futurama. It's pretty funny. But in there, they have suicide booths in there. So you can go pay and, end everything. And it's no big deal to them. And there's another movie called Children of Men, where they also have suicide pills that the government give out. Other things like food for medicines are still illegal, but those things are legal. But I see this headline in France that says they're going to give free birth control to all of their women in France, just free. So you could just see like the resources that are real resources, like children, your future, farming, things like that. Those are all the things that are disappearing and being labeled anti-human. So if you don't like CO2, you're worried about the environment. But people don't understand that all these plants and all these farms and all of that stuff is all CO2. It's plant food. Without the CO2, we're not going to have things to eat and things to breathe. Like nothing will give us oxygen. So on its face, that whole idea is idiotic. But then now they're mixing it. They're mixing it with your health care, and they are switching the blame. Just like in the climate argument, they switched the blame over to you, the regular person. And I've seen everyone from the president of the United States to other leaders blame unvaccinated people for everything that's happening. And now that we're allowed to say things like, I know for a fact, and I can say it because it's in the mainstream media now, that it is indeed a gain of function process that may have caused this. I can also say, because the mainstream media admitted it, that people that are vaccinated are spreading the virus everywhere, shedding it. And I can also say, because the mainstream media also said, and the CDC admitted, that they count people with only 2 vaccinations as unvaccinated. So when they give you these numbers of the hospitals full of unvaccinated people, or they say that look what the unvaccinated people caused, or that look at all these deaths and they're all unvaccinated, you really have to check the source and realize what they're saying and read the literature. And then you find out, oh, well, they're saying, you know, if you've had 2 vaccines in the last 2 weeks, then you're unvaccinated. So if you get sick with corona and you go into the hospital with any symptoms, you're unvaccinated.
Play on words. Yeah, they're using lexicon against us. Because you made an interesting point there. Everything's about the supply chain disruptions, and I keep seeing the same images of stories coming back. And I don't know how much further they can milk the Hurricane Ida destruction, but one thing that keeps recurring, at least in the grain world news feeds, is the 22 barges that are sunk in the Mississippi. The 22 barges that are sunk in the Mississippi. Oh, there was a high tension tower with 8 high voltage cables sunk in the Mississippi next to the grain barges sunk in the Mississippi. Like, that is a major thing. If any of you, it's not making the mainstream headlights like on CNN, but if you go over to AgWeb or any of these kind of other agricultural websites that follow, and even the USDA had referenced it. So when you start to see, you know, this whole push in at least the ag media about 22 barges are sunk in the Mississippi, it's going to delay this, it's going to delay that. They're already talking to traders that way and saying, hey, there's going to be further disruption, either outbound, going to China from the deliveries, or inbound, things as fertilizer or base constituents to create fertilizers. Like, there's a last push right now to dump a bunch of potash, however you like to say it, potash is the way I say it, onto the crops to get that last maturing yield out of it, to take those sugars straight up to, like, for example, corn. It's going to be maturing in the fields in the next few weeks. If you can get that extra little bit of sugar into it, and then I find magically that, wait a second, all about boosting with sugar was all about getting higher sugar content for the grains, so ethanol could be produced more efficiently. But now, just in the last 2 weeks, all the ethanol mandates are gone. No grandfathered in anything. It's just like, no, don't worry about we don't need ethanol anymore. We don't need that. So what they're going to try to do is redivert that food into the bellies. See, the farmland and the number of millions of acres that were set aside for ethanol production, that's why you see E85 fuels eating up your engines everywhere. That was a whole Bush thing after 9/11. Oh, we got to do switchgrass. We got to do ethanol in the gas. Well, no, it was more planned reduction and planned obsolescence of your engine, because that's why I spend a little bit more. I buy the 100% fuels for machines on the farm that I want to run. Yes, it costs more, 15 to 20% more, at least where I'm at in Tennessee. So looking at how they're trying to redivert all the ethanol over back into human or some kind of animal feed to get production up, you can see where it moves. But, you know, you made an interesting point there, Ransom, on, let me ask you a question. Maybe you can answer my question for me here. When you said the elite strike back events. So what events do the serfs push against the elite where you get one of these elite strike back events? Because I'm seeing one in here. Everybody's awakening, going, no. We're getting this incredible pushback right now against things happening. And, you know, 2019, the Wayback Machine, if I could drag everybody back just a year and a half ago to 2019, November, that's almost 2 years. Remember how there were 22 global street protests in 22 nations protesting central banking and the way that money was issued and interest was charged on money that was then given to the citizens, where they needed to charge taxes to pay off the fictitious debt by sovereign nations overseen by central banks? Remember, that was a huge, growing global cause. And then the next week it was 23rd country, and it would have been the 25th, would have been the 40th, would have been the 50th country, and there would have been a global awakening to central banking and the corruption and the lies and the wars and the taxation that is not due to anybody except the bankers who fictitiously created that system that then paid fake money off of your labor back to them, so they were getting free money by the authority to print money for a country, which is what? I have a printing press in my house. Awesome. I'll be your central banker. So that was an elite strike back event, which I firmly believe was COVID leading into this grand solar minimum lockdown for food production. But people had woken up a little bit too early. I believe the elite didn't anticipate everybody charging ahead on the central banking issue of saying, hey, central banks across the planet need to cease right now. And that's what happened in 2019. And suddenly COVID was within 2 months, COVID was here after those central bank protests reached about the 23rd, 24th country. Here we are now, COVID lockdowns, moving into the 30th and 40th countries. So you know something huge is going to happen to, like you say, elite strike back event. So beyond the COVID pushbacks now, like where are we going to get to another elite strike back event? What do you think? There's got to be a list of them where the serfs and the people, I'm considering myself too, you know, like you look back at these elite rulers, I'm nowhere remotely in their negative energy vibration. I'm not in their money class because I don't want to do what I would have to do to even remotely get to that place. It's not my style, man, at all. So me being lumped in with those, like where do we go from here, Ransom? What's gonna catalyze the next event where the elite do strike back?
I don't think they're going to give us much time to recuperate from the last round of attacks that they give you. Although I do see the public around the world. I mean, I kind of fail to say that sometimes because I point out all the things that the governments are doing or the governance is doing. And I sometimes forget to point out that there is a lot of pushback. Like in Michigan, they put out a letter to the parents notifying them that they may be arrested if they send their children unvaccinated or without masks. And there was a big uproar about it. So they had to release a statement saying it was a mistake to say that and that they didn't really mean that. But the fact is they did mean it. They just got caught and people didn't accept it and they said no. So they walked it back. And the same thing like in California with the communist teachers. The school district there knew that they were there. They knew they were indoctrinating people. They had no problem with it until they got caught. And hundreds of people came in and complained. So now that they got caught, they'll walk it back. And I'm pretty sure that, you know, you're going to see a lot of talk about Fauci and he's going to disappear. They'll just replace him with someone else so you'll forget. But you can look at any number of things that will keep everyone completely desperate and distracted. We have upcoming wars probably with Russia and China. We're setting up for those. They're pretty much telling us that we're all going to be locked down forever. Even in North Korea, all the way segregated from the rest of the world and supposedly different. They're even, you know, out there marching with biosuits. Tech companies are releasing new softwares that can see what kind of sicknesses you may be hiding. And which is funny because I brought this back up. There was a movie called COVID 2021, I think it was. And in that movie, and it came out, this is funny because they were filming it before the outbreak or pandemic happened. In the movie, they had a different COVID, which is a different name for the common cold. But in that movie, they had these little apps that kept track of people's health. And whenever they coughed or had the sniffles or their temperature was up, a team of people would show up at their house to take them away, to get rid of them, to take them out of society. And then we're actually seeing these things happening in countries that are supposed to be the freest countries in the world. You're hearing them talk about forcing things on you that you have no choice. And I remember at the beginning of the program, you talked about my body, my choice. You will see that nowhere on leftist lips now, because it's been reversed to argue this, and they don't agree with that. They're fine with mandates from the government telling them how their body is going to be. And I think you saw the same thing that I did. The simple fact that the press secretary is saying you don't know what it's like to be a woman, that doesn't work anymore because they told us that men have periods, men can have babies, there is no gender. So even their own tactics are backfiring on them because common sense at the end and saying no is one of the most powerful weapons a citizen or a peasant has, is just saying, no, I'm not going to do that. And it gives other people the courage to do that as well. And they just say no. But you're not getting to see that because there's a control of what you get to see now. From the local to the national level. And it's people like us that are talking about things that go against the narrative. And that's why we're being targeted out. And I don't think it's an accident that my channel gets banned 7 times. They never give me a reason. I have, all kinds of weird technological issues when I bring up certain topics or subjects. But now it's coming out so fast that the mainstream media and the tech giants can't even censor or stop the information from coming out. They just can't do it. It's lightning speed, instant information. So I'm predicting that in the next year, you're not only going to see power outages, food problems, supply chain problems, but you're also going to see huge internet outages in areas that are having real issues so that you can't see them in real time and respond to it locally. And what you've been saying about our timeline kind of really scares me, because I tried to farm this year and I doubled the effort and I have less results than the first year I tried it, which is kind of scary, because if I was depending on that to feed my family, we would be in some serious trouble this winter.
Yeah, and I could second that too. We have had far too much rain this year, well above the average. And with the air not moving to dry plants out, the way that we put the rows in this year, they were far too close. Like, who can actually guess in the future of how far apart you need to space your rows so it gets the proper airflow so you don't have fungal and mold issues in your garden? I mean, that's the level it's at here in Tennessee. Way too much rain. So the standard planting, 6 feet between rows, whatever, it just didn't work this year. So we ended up stripping out entire rows of things we'd planted just to try to get more airflow in so we could salvage what was growing there already. And I've gardened before. My wife's gardened before. And we sit here going, scratching both of our heads saying, what's gone terribly wrong? So we're trying to replant now with the kales, the different types of lettuces, the spinaches, the mustard greens, that kind of green, leafy, super vitamin rich thing. But you can't live on that. You need the proteins. And we were down at the Amish farm earlier today. And just an early warning for those of you who rely on the Amish to get all of your produce. I was saying, well, what happens if, there's a grid down situation or something like this, and, you have thousands of people driving out here wanting to buy food from you? And he said, oh, no, we just lock the gates, half a mile up the road and just say, no, we're out of business, no food or whatever, and that's it. And I said to him, people aren't going to accept that because they know you have stored food here everywhere across all these farms. They have like 500 acres over here. It's like, yeah, well, okay, we understand that too. But in the beginning, to answer your question, what were we going to do? We're just going to close everything and nobody allowed in. So wherever you think you might be like, oh, man, we got the secret spot. We got the Amish. Hell yeah, man. Well, even though the Kroger closes down or the Sam's Club closes or Costco closes, we got the secret spot. We're going to run down to the Amish, man. They live in the countryside. Nobody's going down there, just in the local neighborhood. No, there'll be thousands of people going down there too. So wherever you look, even if you think you have an out for your own food, unless you're really growing your own, you don't have that security. Just like you said, if you don't have the pistol on the hip, which I'm super excited in Tennessee, there's no more carry laws here. Like, everybody can carry anywhere except for a quote-unquote bar. So if they're serving alcohol and at the front it says, alcohol, they have an alcohol license inside the bar. It doesn't apply to restaurants, only bars. You can't carry a firearm in the bar, and everything's concealed carry as well. So it doesn't matter where you go. You can't carry a firearm concealed carry into a bar, but everywhere else you can. So for me, it's the same thing. If you got in a safe and you got your mags over here and your rounds are over there and everything's disconnected, like in California, you got to have that. That's what scares me too. And I'm looking at California laws saying You can have the upper and the lower on AR-15, but they need to be disconnected. And then your magazine needs to be in a different place, and it can't be more than 10 rounds. But then the rounds that go in there can only be in another safe. So really, to follow the legal precedent of the law in California, you're going to need 4 different gun safes for a single gun to have everything that you need to make it operate. But in an emergency situation, how fast are you able to assemble that firearm, go in, get the magazine, load it, because you're not allowed to have a speed loader there anyway. You know, that's illegal to have that too. So you're going to have to push them in one by one down and then put that in. And how long would that take you? And to even get into all 4 safes before you can even assemble that thing? I mean, it's the most ridiculous of ridiculous things, laws that are, you know, and being out in Tennessee where you can conceal carry without a permit. I mean, that's on the user. You make a mistake with that, the law is on you. That is your problem, because everybody can play Wild West, but if you make the mistake, and you're going to have to A, live with that for the rest of your life, and B, you're going to have to deal with the law because you didn't know how to control yourself. Not on me, man. That's on the user and the holder of that. So anyway, if you don't own it, it's like crypto. If you don't own the keys, you don't own it. It's like gold and silver. You could have it on paper, but if you don't have that physical in your hand, you don't own it. And like Ransom and I are saying, you don't have that pistol on your hip, you don't have anything. And you better learn how to operate the safety and keep that thing in a holster and use it correctly and have some training with it, and you'll be all good.
I was thinking with the mags completely unloaded, I'm going to say 30 seconds. Mags loaded, 3 seconds. Click, click, click. That's it. I'm just gonna say, and if you've, this is a good point, and I'm going to change the subject. But if you have a tool of any kind, I'll just put it that way. You're going to want to work with that tool, and you're going to want to, learn that tool, and you're going to want to know everything about it so that you don't have bumbling moments or accidents or mishaps or any of that stuff. You want like a pocket knife. I'll put it this way. I have a pocket knife that I had for probably 20 years. The muscle memory on that thing, I could do anything with that. And I tried to switch over to a new knife, and it just wasn't happening. I would drop it. I stabbed my foot one time on accident. Just not the same thing. So if you have a certain tool of a certain kind, you need to be completely familiar with that, just like the remote control on your TV where you could turn it and do whatever in the dark. That's funny. But I sent you this link, and I wanted to ask you if you saw the Aurora Borealis videos that were going around on September 7th, the same day as the earthquake. And then also I sent you a video of pre-lights. So I had my girlfriend, Anna, who speaks Spanish, tell me what they were saying in the background. And in the video, they're just saying, that's weird. The lights, they just keep going, and they're bad lights. And, what is that? That's basically simple stuff they were saying in the background. But this is minutes before the earthquake, the video I sent you. So there's lights going on. And not only that, you see buildings with their lights brighten, like all the electricity in the buildings going super bright, like a surge, and then other buildings shut off. And I've seen an argument on the internet already trying to debunk that these were earthquake lights, saying that those were transformers blowing up. The problem is the guy loaded the video, and it's confirmed that this was right before the earthquake, before any shaking happened. So there was all kinds of lights, and then up in the Antarctic and the Arctic, the lights are going nuts. So we're having some right now. I think there's a CME headed our way right now, maybe, possibly, but we're finally getting to see these things on the rocks, and it's going to become more and more, commonplace for people to see these big auroras and electromagnetic activity that they've never seen before. So I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, because I'm watching the video, and anybody who wants to find this on YouTube, it's called Earthquake and Lightning Storm Mexico, September 7th, 2021. And if you look at the way that coloration is jumping around, that electro coloration jumping around the atmosphere and the sky everywhere, minutes before the earthquake, if you think about what you're talking, I wish there were no clouds there, because you could see the configuration of how the plasma was moving through the sky. Either it was ground to sky lightning or the traditional lightning that we understand from the clouds down. But if there were no clouds and there was still had that same effect, of plasma, then that would be directly generated from the Earth to the ionosphere. And what's not a lot of people talking about is the Earth and Jupiter moving in conjunction around as this new magnetic field is forming in the outer solar system. So what was considered once before like a Jupiter-Saturn alignment with the Earth is now going to be amplified greatly by the full magnetic field forming with Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, making that square in the outer solar system. So every time the Earth comes into one of these alignments that we always know there's 7.0, 8.0 earthquakes, usually it's Jupiter and Saturn. And then it's amplified if Uranus is on there as well. We're coming into a time right now in 2023 and 2024 that the planets will be in the same configuration as they were in 79 AD. So think about like just cycles of time itself. We're going back 2,000 years. The planets haven't been in the same configuration in some 2,000 years. So what does that leave us? And where does that leave the elite and the rest of the planet, understanding that these cycles are real, and when they come back, the effects on the planet from the magnetism of other celestial bodies in our solar system connecting into a second magnetic field as the sun steps down, the things are going to flow through the Earth in a torus wave, and we're going to have incredible sights, Earth movements, and sounds in our atmosphere, just like we're seeing here. In the aurora, they've had white aurora, which is like these ghostly white auroras. They try to make cute little names for it, like the garland aurora. Somebody would wear on their hip in the 1800s. They try to always pass it away as something else. But these blue lights that you showed me in this video here, Ransom, it definitely looks like electromagnetic discharge from the planet upward. Because there's this couple still shots there. If you pause the frame, one of them almost looks like a T, but you don't get a T in a lightning formation. So if they want to say it's lightning, okay. But when you stop the frame, you can see clearly where something is discharging from the Earth, has a giant bulb in the center, and then two arcs are coming off both sides. Looks like a Tesla coil almost. And for me, that's definitely verification of electric activity off the crust. It's clear as day to see the ball and two streamers coming off of it as a Tesla coil in any laboratory you've ever been in to see a Tesla coil work. Mute.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was gonna say I sent you another video of the an angle from inside someone's house while it was shaking, and you can clearly see that's not only on the ground, but it's in the sky. So it was happening all before that. But at on the same day, the aurora borealis was putting out purples, whites, all kinds of stuff. And then I wanted to show you this, or ask you about this article I sent you here. With all of the stuff that people get accused of when they don't agree with the mainstream version of climate or anything, when you read this article, there is some way far out non-science stuff. So they're basically saying that climate change has shifted the axis of the Earth. So there's your whole story. So just imagine, you don't even have to get too deep into that to realize what it's saying on just the headline. But imagine if we really do start having some real gravitational and magnetic effects on the Earth, like stretching and pulling with the alignment of stuff, or maybe it's just that cycle within the sun contributing to that. They're going to say that
Talk to you, man. Just go back for the time being.
The cops can do that fucking job. This wouldn't be a fucking issue. It's time to write the correct fucking time. Fucking paper.
Go back to your room.
See what I fucking mean? Get the fuck back in your room, you cunt! It's too fucking late! I can't get back in the fucking room! Fuck. Well, take me somewhere where the fucking walls won't cave in!
So he's saying he wants to go somewhere where the walls won't cave in. Poor guy.
Over a fucking fortnight I've been here. I'm not fucking staying here any fucking longer. Why open the fucking door? That's how it's fucking done.
It's your fault that it's because that we drive cars and we eat beef and all of these simple, on its face, idiotic ideas. So if the axis of the earth is shifting, it's either because the earth is growing, it's shaking, or something's pulling on it, and my basic understanding of science.
The electromagnetic field and the direction of the poles is shifting as well. I mean, they got to give a causation for it, Ransom. Really, they do. I mean, it's measurable now that the North and the South Pole are orienting in different directions. We're talking about magnetics, not the actual physical. But it's just like this. It's just like this climate change thing. They knew it would shift and change into extremes as the sun stepped down and the jet streams were going out of their flows and the cloud cells were bunching up. They would have to make an explanation for what people would see in front of them. Well, that was climate change, global warming. You're seeing the effects of the sun on a 400-year, even I believe now more of a 2,000-year cycle that we're going through, running into full steam right now. But imagine if the magnetic orientation of the Earth's poles is shifting. Well, that's measurable now. Even people with a normal compass can see that. Now it's back to the average person on the street is able to see the change that's happening with the magnetic orientation of north and south on our planet. So there has to be an explanation built into it, or otherwise it would spook people. I can't believe the level they're dropping to in just this nonsensical gibberish to explain it away. You put too much CO2, which is a gas, into the atmosphere, so it shifted the planet's orientation and axis. But it's not the actual physical axis orientation, it's more of a magnetic orientation. And that's why all the dolphins and the whales are running into shores, is because you're putting too much CO2. But wait, the strength of the magnetic field on the planet is determined by the strength of the magnetic field on the sun and the intercoupling of those two, I should say, electromagnetic field waves and torus loops between the two planets interconnecting. But you dropping a gas in there is going to interfere with the electromagnetism, which goes back to basic science, and that's not possible. So see, they're counting on you knowing nothing about science, and they're counting on the schooling system dumbing you down enough where you don't understand the interrelationship that a gas can't interfere with magnetism. That's what that article says to me. The lemmings have been dumbed down so much that basic science, they don't know a single thing, and we're counting on that. That's what the article says to me.
Yeah. And it gets into some real, trickery here. So there's a graph on there, and it says trends in hydrological excitation there. And it shows some graphs for the South Andes, Antarctic, Caucasus, and Middle East, and Greenland, Alaska. And they're trying to convince you that because of man-made climate change, that the polar ice caps and glaciers have melted, where the water is going to make the planet heavier and tilt the axis because of you. What they're not telling you is, like in the Antarctic and a lot of these places, we're having record ice growth this year. So it's caught up with the trend and it's growing ice. So I don't know if I might get in trouble for that later on YouTube, but whatever. You can, me with basic knowledge, I can go look at some graphs and see how much the ice grew this year compared to the last couple of years, and see for myself that it's growing. But according to this chart, which sounds very scientific, hydrological excitation. In other words, my little intellect, I think that means water moving around the planet. Anyway, they're trying to convince you that because of all of these greenhouse gases and things that we're doing, that we're literally going to move the planet because we're bad people. And it has nothing to do with the sun or magnetics or gravitational pull or any of these other things. It's because of you, because you eat beef, you drive cars. And this problem's been going on a long time, all the way back to cavemen when they were driving their SUVs. We've been slowly melting all the water off. We're all going to die, and plus COVID.
Well, see, you used too much blue ink for the indigo dye on the cave paintings when the last plasma discharge was. How dare you, Ransom? But let's talk about ice, shall we? Because if you look at Antarctica, they're above the 30-year average this year, above the 30-year average for ice. That's sea ice gain. And for those of you who want to look for gains or loss of ice in both poles, we can go to the Arctic, we can go to the Antarctic. You want to go to NSIDC, that's the National Snow and Ice Data Survey, and they have both North and South Pole with the accumulations of ice or the loss. So you have to click Antarctic or Arctic, whichever one you want to look at. So that's one data source you can go look at, and you can find that. And everywhere you look across the board, everything is showing well over the 30-year average for Antarctic sea ice gain this year, like well above, like incredible above. But if you want to look at the gains of ice on Greenland, you're going to want to head over to something called Polar Portal. And inside there, they have the surface mass budget. So that's another big word to say how much ice is gained or lost in a single day. The surface, I mean, just like the top of the ice, and the mass budget is the total ice loss or gain. So they try to disguise it like the word excitation with the glacial excitation in that same graph that Ransom mentioned there. Well, surface mass budget is a big way, and people might go, I don't know what that means. Well, it just means on the surface how much ice is gained or lost during a single day. We know there were a couple days back there this year that it went off the chart of the gains in the melt season. When I say off, the chart pegged at 12 gigatons on gain, but the actual amount of gain for the day was 13.7 gigatons, which means, to put the chart in perspective, they would have had add in almost 2 entire new bands up there to get it to 14 gigatons for that thing, so it wouldn't peg the chart. In reality, they probably have to put 15 gigatons, so it looked like it was a little bit below the top of the chart, so it didn't make all-time record highs. But it pegged the chart, and they didn't adjust the data upward. They just pegged on the chart at 12 gigatons. And then all through the melt season this year, record gain, record gain, record gain, and then this melt season ended 2 months too early this year. 2 months earlier than the average. So now we're into gains again already before the melt season officially ended on September 1st. This was already gaining and ending at the end of August. And there's record snows across so many places in the Northern Hemisphere already. You got to go over to Electroverse. It's one of my favorite sites that collates and aggregates a bunch of data and stories about record snow, record hail, record cold temperatures, etc., in the political sense of things, on how the IPCC is trying to, with the COP26 coming in November, pass all these new laws that says people like me and Ransom are going to be banned from the internet for talking about, and just like with the COVID thing, you can't have any opposition to it. Well, after COP26, they're going to put in laws, like real laws on the books, where not only do we talk about it, but we can be arrested for talking about it. And this is where I need to do a little more research on what is going to be passed in COP26 on how your freedom can be limited and put behind bars because you disagree that a gas does not warm the atmosphere, that the sun has more influence on the Earth's climate system than the human does. And for saying that, I believe we're in a time machine. I think I might get rolled back into the 1400s again here. I'm not sure, but that's exactly where we're going. In 2021, we're going to be rolled back into the early 1400s, where I shall be sitting next to Copernicus, being threatened, burned alive, because I believe that a gas is not changing the atmosphere, but the sun is. And that's what's coming up in COP26 here in November. So yay, it seems like freedom is just a name of the freedom is everywhere. We live in the most free country in the world. Ransom is free. It's so free. Everything's free. How dare you say that it's not? You don't like our country.
I love our country. But I wanted to take you down a sci-fi route. I think you've probably seen The Matrix, right?
Love that movie. So much truth.
Okay, so let's put a little weird timeline down. Two writers, movie script writers, put together a movie called The Matrix. They recently did a little talking with some people that were in the government that let them look at some declassified files about when you put people in tanks and deprivation and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, they made a movie script out of it in which the AI robotics took over completely the entire planet, enslaved mankind. You know the story. So in 1999 that happened. The people in the movie they awoke. They were aware of the Matrix, and then there was, it got reloaded, and there was several sequels. Well, now in 2021, the new Matrix movie is coming out. And already, just from watching the preview of the movie, I can see some pee in your face. So everybody woke up in 2000 or 1999, whichever you prefer. We had 2001, and slowly everybody fell asleep and went back to the Matrix. Kind of like what you were saying about over and over again. We've had, almost the singularities of the civilization saying no, about wars, about banks, and now it's going to be about the new topic. But back to the Matrix. So on 12/22/21, so 122221, right? They got to throw that Illuminati reverse action number in there for the date of the release. The people in the movie that woke up from the Matrix slowly went back to sleep somehow and were put back into the Matrix. And the Matrix is being reborn in the movie title Matrix. What is it? Reincarnation? I forget what it's called. I messed it up there.
Resurrections, because I actually pulled that up. I didn't know that movie was coming out.
That's right, Resurrection. So what they're telling you, literally, pee in your face, is the Matrix that
predictive programming. So let me set that. Pee in your face is predictive programming in your face.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot. Okay, so basically what they're telling you right here in your face is that the Matrix of control is being resurrected. I mean, right in your face. And you think about these two guys that wrote it. Well, you can't call them guys anymore because they've completely transformed into women. So both of the brothers that wrote this first movie are now women. And we have a new installment of the movie in the future. And I'm sure it's going to be very socially justice. And mark my words, when you watch this movie, it will tilt the ideas that they gave you from the first movie about breaking away from the Matrix and how everything is intrinsically attached to the Matrix, so much so that even the people that are slaves to it will fight you to protect the Matrix, to protect the system. And are we not at that point? And how ironically this movie's coming out again about, resurrecting the Matrix.
Or the secondary meaning would be, it's so all-powerful, the AI, that you can't resist. Even those that are broken free will be replaced and put back in because it's an all-powerful entity, so why even bother? Sort of that Star Wars-y, feeling about it, why you cannot resist. Whatever's happening now, the human consciousness field is being pushed against the dark entities, and they're trying. I really believe in my heart and soul that the changes that are manifesting electromagnetically right now, and it is in our local region here, in our star and the planets, etc. It's sort of a wave that comes through every time that purifies and resets, just as a creator would do. It wouldn't let something go to nothing in its realm. Well, that's what the archons, or these energies, whatever you like to call them, the jinn, want to take us down to. So if you knew this as the dark force, that your time was completely over, you realized it was over. It really was done. At what point of desperation would you do as the darkness, knowing you would be relegated back for 25,000 plus years of Earth time, not in different dimensional time, but Earth years, before you can even manipulate or grab back to the first human again, that this was the last vestige of being able to manifest or hold state in this world because the vibration frequency is increasing so quickly. Because for me, it looks like the vibration's increasing so quickly every day that the desperation of these top-down pyramidal structure of power is trying to hold. So it's just within a year, it's going to finish. The culmination of this is going to occur within the next 1 to 2 years. Just how quickly vibrationally everything's going. We're rising as a human species, but the darkness is stuck where it was. It's in iron state. It can't evolve, and it's trying to hold on and grab whatever physical form it can to draw it down or lock it into this sort of iron, if you will, real dark, heavy energy space, and lock it onto the molecules with it and keep it with you, or keep it with them for the next 25,000 year cycle as the rest of humanity and the spirituality evolves and leaves it behind. Literally, it'll disappear out of the visual spectrum range because we'll vibrate faster than it is in a visible state. And I really believe we're at that point. We're in and out of this in 2 years because the vibration frequency changes are happening so quickly. And we are in the battle between good and evil and light and dark at this moment. I absolutely believe that. We are in a spiritual battle right now. This is it. If you've ever been awake and alive to believe in anything or be alive and take your breaths to fight for anything, this is it. And it's all about using your mind to change the reality. If you want to talk about the matrix, then use your mind to bend the code inside it. So I'll leave you there.
With your breath. That's funny that you said that. It's like sometimes you read my mind. I was just reading a thing. I sent you the link. It's an article from France 24 about the office air quality and how it affects workers' cognitive functions. Now, you got to remember, we live in a time where they're telling you to cover up your face, and they're telling all students that go to school that learn to cover their faces as well. So when you combine these two ideas, because that's not their intention with the article, I guarantee you, but it says feeling sluggish at work, poor ventilation, pollution might play a part. What about breathing in and out the same toxins that your body's trying to get rid of? And you add that to what they're saying, and then you talk about what David's saying about a whole new vibration and how they're trying to send us down a dark path. Now, if you were really wanting to send someone down a dark path of, I'm going to call it suffering, because that's a good word for actually what they want, what they're causing. It's suffering. And they can give people suffering in a number of ways. Lack of food, lack of nutrition in their food, lack of air. And think about this. Maybe we got it all wrong, David. Maybe it's not an attack on CO2. That's just a roundabout way to attack oxygen, which we need to think clearly. I mean, think about what they're saying when they want to reduce CO2. They know that all the plants that give us oxygen are directly and have a direct correlation with the amount of CO2. So in order for the human being to flourish and have lots of plants and lots of nutrients and lots of fresh air, we definitely wouldn't want CO2 or oxygen to be considered bad. But that's the world we live in. How odd is that?
Extinction level event is 260 parts per million of CO2 on the planet. If it drops below that, everything on the planet would go extinct. So us being around, 410 at the moment, is close to the lowest you can possibly get on the planet ever in the existence of the planet without everything being exterminated. Now, through history, we've been as high as 7,000 parts per million. But when you look at where the ocean levels were, and it just doesn't match. It just doesn't match. 7,000 parts per million was experienced just a few ice ages back in the interglacial. But ocean levels weren't 1,600 feet above where they are now. Because if you were going to use the same thing, like, it rose from 420 to 450, and the oceans are going to rise 35 feet. Okay, well, where does it go from 450 to 7,000? Well, there's no water match with that. You know, so the mathematics don't even work on the ocean level rises with CO2. But just for a quick FYI, extinction level event 260. I want to go as far away from that as possible. Let's put more CO2 in the atmosphere so we all can live, have more oxygen from the plants. Ransom Godwin, 420 TV, Freedom of Films, dropping in some deep thoughts tonight right along here. David Divine. Yeah, 2030. We'll see you next.
Particularly triggered right now. Thomas? You seem particularly triggered right now. Can you tell me what happened?
I've had dreams that weren't just dreams.
Am I crazy? We don't use that word in here.
Hi.
Have we met?
One pill makes you larger, and one pill makes you small. And the ones that mother gives you don't do anything at all. Go ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall.
Time to fly.
Chasing rabbits.
If you want the truth, Neo, you're going to have to follow me.
The only thing that matters to you is still here. I know it's why you're still fighting and why you will never give up. You don't know me, no?
After all these years, to be going back to where it all started. Back to the Matrix.
Well, it might be kind of redundant. It's Return to the Matrix, man. We're gonna get resurrected and go back into the system. And that's what they're telling you, I think. It's the reason I pointed this out, mostly. Anyway, that was David Dubine with Mini Ice Age Conversations there. And that's all I got for 420 TV. Thanks for watching. Oh, wait. I just realized you can't even see me. I'm just talking to no one. Where's my, there we go. Anyway, peace out. Thanks for watching. And I'll be on later with more from the amazing Stonerverse of crazy things that keep happening. And yes, that was a man who got sentenced to 10 years for stabbing a woman in the ass with semen-filled syringe. But if you remember on the other show, I told you, semen, unvaccinated semen, is white gold. Woo! Think about that.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
I wear this crown